What's up, everyone? So, this is probably the single most question I got about GTA 6 right now. Is it actually going to run at 60 frames per second, or are we locked to 30 like every other Rockstar game? And to be honest, the answer hasn't changed a lot in the last 2 weeks. We've gone from almost definitely not to maybe. So, today I want to walk you through exactly why, who's saying what, and who we should actually trust here. So, let's get into it. Okay, so let's rewind a bit. Ever since the first two trailers dropped, the assumption from most technical analysis was that GTA 6 was a 30 FPS game. Digital Foundry broke down both trailers frame by frame, and they concluded they were rendering somewhere around 1440p, which was upscaled to 4K at 30 frames per second. And they used a heavy ray traced global illumination, which was baked into basically every shot. Their argument was simple: you can't just turn off the lighting system to hit 60 FPS, because it's not a setting, it's the core of how the game looks. So remove it for performance mode and you lose the whole visual identity that made those trailers go viral in the first place. So for a long time, that was basically the agreement: quality over frame rate. But recently, a Polish gaming podcast called Rock and Boris threw a wrench into all of that. Before I tell you what they said, let's talk about who they are, because source credibility is actually important here. Boris, the host making this claim, has a real track record. He correctly leaked that CD Projekt Red was working on a new Witcher 3 expansion years before it was confirmed. That's a legitimate insider claim. But here's the catch: that track record is with CD Projekt Red, not Rockstar. This is reportedly his first time reporting on anything Rockstar related, so he's not unproven, but he's also not a known quantity in this space yet. Here's the actual claim. According to a single source he describes as very reliable and close to Rockstar, GTA 6 will ship with two graphic modes on PS5 and Xbox Series X, a 30 FPS quality mode and a 60 FPS performance mode, not a PS5 Pro exclusive, base consoles too. But, and this is the most important part, his source said Rockstar isn't 100% certain that 60 FPS mode will be ready for the November 19th launch. It might not make it day one, it could show up later as a post launch patch instead. He also mentioned Xbox Series X, specifically, reportedly locked to 30 FPS for now, with Rockstar working alongside a Microsoft team to try to get it higher, though that's described as a much bigger stretch given the hardware gap. So now you've got leaks suggesting 60 FPS is possible, but Digital Foundry, who have honestly been the most consistent technical voice on this game throughout the entire pre-launch cycle, are still skeptical. Their position is that the bottleneck here isn't the GPU, it's actually the CPU. GTA 6 is built on insanely dense simulation. There are clouds of NPCs all running independent AI behavior, real time vehicle and water physics, destructible environments, collision across a massive open world. All of that runs on the CPU. Here is why that matters for frame rate specifically. Dropping the render resolution helps when your GPU is the bottleneck. It does nothing when your CPU is already maxed out doing the physics and AI calculations. The CPU workload doesn't change just because you're rendering a few pixels. That's actually the wall. It also explains why PS5 Pro isn't a guaranteed fix. The Pro has a significantly upgraded GPU over base PS5, but basically the same CPU. So if this really is a CPU bound problem, the Pro's extra graphics horsepower doesn't directly solve it. The more realistic middle ground floated for Pro is a 40 FPS mode paired with a 120Hz display and VRR, which can feel generally smoother, similar to what some games actually have done. Okay, so here's what I think. The fact that the two modes framework keeps showing up from more than one direction, the podcast leak and the retail listing, does suggest that internally Rockstar is at least targeting two modes. That part feels more solid than just one person's claim. But whether 60 FPS is actually achievable on base PS5 and Series X at launch is a completely separate question. And Digital Foundry CPU argument is a real engineering, not doom posting. This isn't a typical open world game pushing draw distance, it's stimulating an enormous amount of independent behavior every single frame. That said, Rockstar got Red Dead Redemption 2 running on PS4 and Xbox One, which at that time felt borderline impossible given the same game scope. If anyone has the engineering depth to claw out a 60 FPS mode through months of optimization, it's Rockstar. My honest prediction is 30 FPS quality mode for everyone at launch, with a 60 FPS performance mode following later in a post launch patch for PS5 and Series X, and Series S staying at 30 indefinitely. That's the scenario that fits everything we've heard so far. So that's everything we know right now. Rockstar hasn't confirmed a single frame rate target officially. Everything here is leaks, retail listing, technical analysis, not an announcement. Drop a comment with what frame rate you're actually expecting at launch and whether it would change how excited you are for November 19th. If this kind of breakdown is useful, hit the subscribe so you don't miss out when Rockstar actually confirms specs. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one.